I'm Chris, and today we're going to do a real quick furnace fix. Let's do this real quick. Before you start tearing your furnace apart, you want to have an idea of what's going on and what the problem is. If it's available on your furnace, you might want to take a look through the little sight window and read the error codes off of the main board, just to give you an idea of what's going on. Now it's pretty obvious with the amount of squeaking that bearing inside the inducer is making that there's going to be a problem later on. Now aside from the bearing squeaking, you might notice that when you go to move it, it's going to have a little resistance to it. And you really want to take care of that, because if that bearing doesn't move freely, that means the inducer fan isn't going to move freely and spin the way it should, and it's not going to really allow the pressure sensing switch to sense that the inducer fan did come on and everything's working correctly. After you've shut the main breaker off to your furnace, it's a good idea to go ahead and double check that there's no power going to the furnace. Once you know you shut the power off to the furnace and it's safe to work on without the risk of electrocution, you can go ahead and disconnect the power going to the inducer motor. Now it's time to start taking everything apart to pull that inducer out so we can take a closer look at it and find out exactly what's going on. Go ahead and disconnect the ground to the motor and look for the bolts that are actually holding the housing on to the whole unit itself. In my case, there was only 4 bolts holding it on. Disconnect the hose that's going from the inducer right to the pressure switch. And then we should be able to carefully take the whole inducer housing straight out of the furnace itself and take a closer look at it. Now, to get to the bearings inside the inducer motor, we have to go ahead and take this little retaining clip off that's really just holding on the cooling fan for the motor itself. There's 4 more bolts we have to remove to gain access to the first bearing. I lucked out because the first bearing was actually my problem bearing, and that makes it a lot easier to do this fix. If you have to gain access to the bearing underneath everything, it's a little bit more problematic taking everything apart. Now we can go ahead and do this quick fix where we're just going to oil the bearing, or if you really want, you can pop the seal off of there, clean everything out inside the bearing, or replace the whole bearing itself. Oiling the bearing is going to give you a quick fix, so at the very least you can get your furnace going for the freezing night ahead of you, so you can actually take the time to get the correct parts to fix your furnace. Whatever fix you choose to do, it's time to go ahead and reassemble everything and put everything back in the correct order. Don't forget to replace that retaining clip back onto the shaft so it holds the cooling fan onto the motor. When reinstalling everything, you want to pay attention to this little pipe here. That's going to allow any condensation to run down the pipe into that little hose that's going to run down into the drain itself, so you don't create a mess inside and have potential problems later on. Reinstall your inducer fan back into your furnace, and make sure you go ahead and take that hose that you took off earlier and reconnect it to the inducer. That hose is going to run from the inducer to the pressure switch, and you want to make sure you reconnect that so your furnace works correctly. Take a moment now to watch your furnace run to make sure everything's working in its proper order. Once you're satisfied with your real quick fix, go ahead and button everything back up and put all the covers back on. Now keep in mind that this is a quick fix. It may last a day, it may last a couple years like it has for me, but it's a good idea to have a plan in place, whether that might be ordering a new bearing, a whole new inducer, or calling your service tech. You don't want to be left out in the cold. I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and you found this video helpful in getting your furnace to run for the night, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much.